Americas.
Mexico. The shaking earth. Amid the tragedy of another quake, Mexicans can find some small consolations.
The timing seemed supernatural. At 1:14 p.m. on September 19th, just a couple of hours after Mexicans had completed an evacuation drill marking the 32nd anniversary of an earthquake that devastated the capital, the ground shook once again. The second big quake to hit the country in a fortnight killed at least 230 people, injured several hundred, and left many more without homes. In Mexico City, the site of around half the deaths, it caused terror and heartbreak. It was the strongest that I can remember, said Susana Bustamante, an employee of a telecoms firm. Some people really panicked. Around 40 buildings collapsed in the capital. They included the Enrique Rebsamen Primary School, where 21 children and 4 adults were killed. At least one trapped child was alive on the following day, but other people were still missing. According to Eduardo Corona of the government's Civil Protection Agency, the building had collapsed on top of the children and was very compact, like a pancake. Throughout the night, rescue workers and volunteers combed the ruins of buildings across the city in a search for survivors. At least 52 people were pulled alive from the rubble. Towns and cities in 4 states near the capital were also hit. In Morelos, 69 people were confirmed dead, 16 of them in the town of Jojutla, which suffered much destruction. In Cuernavaca, the state capital, a 10-story building came down. The Cortes Palace, one of the earliest Spanish colonial buildings in Mexico, was damaged, and the murals by Diego Rivera it contains were fractured. Several of the buildings that fell in the capital were in Condesa and Roma, trendy districts full of bars and restaurants where many foreigners live. They are built on the friable, dried-up bed of the lake that surrounded the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan and suffered damage in 1985. Tens of thousands of residents milled about in Mexico City's streets, ordered not to return to their homes or offices because of fears of further damage. Gas leaks caused some fires and much fear. Officials said that 40% of Mexico City and 60% of Morelos lacked electricity immediately after the quake. The earthquake that struck southern Mexico on September 7th, killing at least 90 people in the states of Oaxaca and Chiapas, was one of the strongest ever recorded in the country, with a magnitude of 8.1. But its epicenter was 120 kilometers, that's 75 miles, out at sea. The latest one was less strong, at 7.1, but deadlier, centered on the border of Morelos and Puebla states, only about 120 kilometers south of the capital. The first quake, which shook Mexico City but did little damage there, bred a certain complacency. That has been brutally dispelled. President Enrique Peña Nieto, who had set out to visit areas damaged on September 7th, returned to the capital and declared an emergency. It is a severe test and very painful for our country, he said. The earthquakes come with the national mood at a low ebb. Mexicans are fed up with corruption and violence, and the economy is sluggish. Across the border, Donald Trump regularly insults and threatens Mexico, though he has now offered American help. Mr. Peña is deeply unpopular. Now nature has delivered a body blow. There were 2 crumbs of comfort. Disasters bring out the best in Mexicans. Within minutes, ordinary people clutching buckets to collect rubble dashed to help. Thousands laboured alongside rescue workers. They directed traffic and donated food and water. Though in smaller towns there were fears of looting, Mexicans showed that they are not the bad hombres of Mr. Trump's imagination. The second consolation lay in the contrast with the devastating quake of 1985. On that occasion, some 400 buildings crumpled, including whole city blocks. Estimates of the death toll range from 6,500 to 20,000. That the damage was far less extensive this time owes much to stricter building codes introduced in the decades since. In recent years, giant 50-story-plus office towers have sprouted along Reforma, Mexico City's grandest avenue. This week they swayed but did not buckle. The damage was mainly confined to pre-1985 buildings. That suggests there is more to be done to promote the retrofitting with seismic protection of older buildings, as Chile has done. In particular, questions will be asked as to why the Rebsamen school gave way. In 1985, the government's reaction was one of heartless inaction and shameful denial. This time there was no cover-up, as television channels offered rolling coverage of the destruction and the rescue efforts. And this time police, troops and firefighters were quickly mobilized, working alongside citizens rather than trying to obstruct them. Regular drills mean Mexicans know what to do. Alarms give some warning of earthquakes, though not when they are centred as close as this week's was. The mishandled response to the 1985 earthquake contributed to the fading of the authoritarian political system of the Institutional Revolutionary Party, or PRI, which ruled Mexico for more than 7 decades until 2000. Mr. Peña restored the PRI to power, but in a democracy with a vigorous civil society whose origins date to the grassroots response to the earlier earthquake. Amid the sadness and the destruction, Mexicans should also reflect on how far they have come in the past 32 years.